Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of the Mighty Maccabees. Yes, we're back for episode 2 in this series. Now, I am going to jump in, you guys. If you haven't seen episode 1 of the Mighty Maccabees, it may have been called Masked with Fear or Shining by Faith. Something like that. There's a picture of the spirit of Detroit holding a mask on his face. Anyways, and super cavitation torpedoes. If you missed episode 1, you're literally going to be lost in the story. And this story is so epic that it literally is never told. Yeah, no kidding. They literally ripped this one straight out of our Bibles a long time ago because they didn't want people to consider the power of these people's prayers. Now, this story, you guys, the story of Maccabees. I'm reading from the Et Sefer today, and I'm going to be jumping all over the stinking place because you ever have those times in your life where you feel like garbage and you're so exhausted, you know? I've been going through some of those times, but it's okay because perseverance brings forth good things. And so I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit, a good portion in here, about plants and how they persevere. Did you know plants are so much smarter than you thought they were? Hold on. Seriously, plants have a supernatural intelligence that nobody told you about called auxins. We're going to talk about auxins and plant hormones and their ability to stand up under the scourge of wind. Yeah. And some of you guys need to gird up your stinking loins because they're soft and soggy. Yeah, prepare some offensive talk. Now, I'm going to jump in, okay? I'm reading from the Et Sefer because the Sefer, like I've told you guys before, is a collection of texts that were once included in the canonical Bible scriptures. Basically, there were books that used to be in our Bibles, like the 1611 King James Bible used to have like 82 books in it. Now it's down to 66. Other Bibles all over the world contain the books of 1st and 2nd Maccabees. This one has 1st, 2nd, and 3rd and 4th Maccabees in it so that you can get the whole context. Now, there's other books that are included in this Bible, scripture, translation, that are also worth reading, and I highly encourage you to seek them out if you can, such as the Book of Jubilees, marvelous. My daughter's named Jubilee because it's marvelous. Anyways, we're going to be jumping in to 2nd Maccabees, chapter 3. Chapter 3. All right, you ready for this? Hold on. I'm not. I need to get some water. Now, like I said in the previous video, if as I'm going along, you randomly hear me say this phrase, et. That's the et. The aleph and the tav. Because basically, in the translation of the text, the Hebrew Bible, there's this phrase, aleph and tav, the aleph and the tav, and it's just in there amongst other words constantly, like hundreds of times, almost, I think, 1,500, 1,400-ish times, and most scripture translations just throw it out. They don't even include it at all, but it's incredibly imperative that we also include it if it's there. So if you hear me say that at times, that's what it is. Yeshua says, the last chapters of the book, that he is the aleph and the tav. So maybe he sewed himself into scripture from the beginning to end, like the word that became flesh, that was in the aleph, the beginning. In the beginning, aleph and tav is right there. In the first verse of the Bible, the aleph and tav is there. And in the last verses, the aleph and tav is there. So if you hear that, that's why. Also, in the translation from the Sefer Publishing Group, they included the transliteration of English names from Hebrew, so that when I say them, they sound kind of like how it's said in Hebrew. If you hear me butcher that, please be merciful. I'm doing my best. Let's go. Now, when the holy city was inhabited with all peace, and the Torah was kept very well, because of the holiness of Oniyahu, the high priest, and his hatred of wickedness, it came to pass that even the kings themselves did honor the place and magnify the temple with their best gifts, insomuch that Seleucus of Asia, of his own revenues, bore all the costs belonging to the service of the sacrifices. Pause. That's an incredible amount of financial burden to bear. The costs of bearing out the sacrifices for all the priests, all the garments, all the food, the bread, the wine, the oil, the salt, the flour, the baking, the human beings. It's an enormous undertaking to pay for all of this. So I want you to not overlook this. There was somebody who regarded the scriptures and what the Father was doing in Jerusalem as so precious that he was literally paying for all of it to be done there. Wow. What would the body look like if the kings regarded the scriptures and literally sustained the kingdom work completely? I don't know, because I've never seen it happen. But I had to carry on. But one, enter in the bad guy. One Shimeon of the tribe of Benjamin, who was made governor of the temple, fell out with the high priest about disorder in the city. And when he could not overcome Oniyahu, he got him to Apollonius, the son of Thracius, who then was governor of Silo Aram and of Phoenicia, and told him that the treasury in Jerusalem was full of infinite sums of money, so that the multitude of their riches, which did not pertain to the account of the sacrifices, was innumerable, and that it was possible to bring it into the king's hand. Now when Apollonius came to the king and had shown him the money whereof he was told, the king chose out Heliodorus, his treasurer, and sent him with a commandment to bring him the foresaid money. So forthwith Heliodorus took his journey under a color of visiting the cities of Selo Aram and Phoenicia, but indeed to fulfill the king's purpose. And when he was come to Jerusalem and had been courteously received of the high priest of the city, he told him what intelligence was given of the money, and declared whereof he came, and asked if these things were so indeed. Then the high priest told him that there was such money laid up for the relief of widows and fatherless children, and that some of it belonged to Hyrcanus, the son of Tobiahu, a man of great dignity, and not as that the wicked Simeon had misinformed. The sum was in all 400 talents of silver and 200 talents of gold. Pause. A talent, you guys, was like 75 to 100 pounds. This is an enormous quantity of funds. And this is what was reserved, you guys, meaning that people were still bringing offerings and gifts to the priests at the temple, like their tithes. They were still bringing forth these things. It wasn't always silver and gold, you guys. Sometimes you literally were commanded, if the journey was too far for you to bring ox and cattle and sheep and stuff like that, you could then sell that stuff and turn it into silver and gold and take it on a long journey. Some of it was physically silver and gold, but some of the excess that they did not need was converted into silver and gold and stored in a treasury so that they could look after the orphans and the widows and the fatherless. That was one of the also predominant jobs of the priests that they needed to be doing in their life, was to look after the orphans and the widows. This guy, Simeon, stinking Simeon here, had a little idea that he could take over some of this stuff that was going on because he wasn't the high priest and he coveted power. And so he went and made a lie and said that all this extra gold and silver and all this stuff was just sitting there idly and needed to be his. So because of that, we're about to see some bad stuff go down, you guys. You ever hear about stuff like this going down in the body? Just saying. Other people trying to usurp other people's ministries and sowing lies and stuff about them and trying to take it. Don't do it. Anyways, I digress. And that it was altogether impossible that such wrong should be done unto them that had committed it to the holiness of the place and to the majesty and the inviolable sanctity of the temple, honored over all of the world. But Heliodorus, because of the king's commandment given him, said that in any wise it must be brought into the king's treasury. So at the day which he appointed, he entered in order to do this matter. Wherefore there was no small agony throughout the whole city, but the priests, prostrating themselves before the altar in their priest's vestment, called unto heaven upon him that made a Torah concerning things given to be kept, that they should safely be preserved for such as had been committed to them to be kept. Then whosoever had looked upon Oniyahu, the high priest, in the face, it would have wounded his heart, for his countenance and the changing of his color declared the inward agony of his mind. For the man was so compassed with fear and horror of the body that it was manifest to them that looked upon him what sorrow he now had in his heart. Others ran, flocking out of their houses to the general supplication, because the place was likely to come into contempt. And the women, girt with sackcloth, and under their breasts abounded in the streets, and the virgins that were kept in ran, some to the gates and some to the walls, and looked out of the windows, and all were holding their hands toward the heaven, crying out, making supplications. Then it would have pitied a man to see the falling down of the multitude of all sorts, and the fear of the high priest being in such an agony. Then they called upon El Shaddai Yahuwah to keep the things committed of trust safe and sure for those that had committed them. Do you hear this, you guys? This is the lengths people were willing to go when they wanted to cry out for deliverance. Each of us right now, we are on the precipice of being launched into such a time where all that we have once known to be free and available to us is being rent away from us, is being stripped from before us, unless we would comply and bear the marks of beasts upon ourselves. Okay, are you just real quick? We were created on day 6, and so too were a whole lot of other things, like the beasts of the field, you guys. This is why we are warned to not be conformed into the image of the beast, because it's in man, just like in beasts. We have souls, you guys. The soul was breathed into each of us, and we became living. The difference between us and beasts is that we became a living soul, living spirit, when the Father imparted breath, his spirit, into us. But he created animals and men on the same day because we were designed to be co-laborers. We were designed to work together, to bear burdens, and to work on the eretz, the earth, together. Excuse me. We were designed to work together. But if man does not walk in the commandments of his Father, if he disregards the instructions of his Father, man will be conformed into the image of a beast again. He will lose the divine nature of his heavenly Father, and he will burn himself off. He will callous his heart off from the set-apart spirit having a place to burn, that he will extinguish the lamp of light of life that is in him. It says the light of this, real quick. If you don't know about the light of Yahuwah, if you don't know about the light of Yeshua, if you ever hear light being referenced in the scripture, if you ever hear about the lamps being burning or oil, it comes from the light of his word. Now, let me tell you this real quick. Proverbs. Let's go there real fast. Hold on. Proverbs chapter 6. Okay, you ready for this? Proverbs chapter 6. My son, guard your father's commandment and forsake not the Torah of your mother. Bind them continually upon your heart and tie them about your neck. When you go, it shall lead you. When you sleep, it shall guard you. And when you awake, it shall talk with you. For the commandment is a lamp, and the Torah is light. And reproofs of instructions are the way of life, meaning discipline and correction. For every man the Father loves, he disciplines, right? This is going to be hugely important and pivotal to the whole rest of the story of Maccabees, because the people of Yehuda, the people of Israel, are going to get reproved and unbelievably chastised, disciplined, and corrected by the Father with the scourge of the nations. It's a horrible thing, guys. We're about to read of some of the worst possible things that could happen to a human being. Some of the most grotesque tortures, sufferings, inventing ways of evil, bad stuff are about to take place against Yahuwah's people as a chastening. The reason I say that, you guys, is because this is the light that's supposed to be burning in us. The instructions of the Father. They're supposed to burn in us. And when they do that, they give us a light to our path, you guys. But if we disregard them and we extinguish the light of his truth in our life and we disregard what he has to say, we will be like the beast. We will be conformed into the system of the beast. All around us, you guys, this worldly system has been patterned and created to be beautiful but deceitful, to beguile you, enticing you so that you would be drawn into its look, by looks and by appealing, like the serpent had Eve looking at the fruit of the tree so that she saw it was pleasing to her eyes and she was seduced by it. And she said it was pleasing to the eyes and it was desirable for food. And because of that, she was seduced and drawn into it. And the same thing takes place in the worldly system all around us, that we take it for granted that we could just go to a store and buy food. But you know what? The people here at the Maccabees, they're about to lose the ability to participate in the system without bearing the mark of a beast upon their heads. You guys, many of us right now today are being forced to make a decision whether or not we'll bear those same marks upon our heads. And if we will not be allowed to participate in those same systems. And you know what? There's a really important thing, that the Father even cared about the beasts enough to say that we should never muzzle an ox. We're forbidden from even muzzling an ox, putting a face mask on an ox. We're forbidden from even doing that to our livestock, let alone upon our own face, you guys. But the worldly system is trying to make us like beasts again, and to where we'll muzzle our own faces, you guys, voluntarily so we can participate in the beast system. Consider it, okay? Now consider also the zealousness these people had, that they were willing to cry out to this degree to preserve the temple, which is our bodies, to preserve the temple from defiling things coming into it or from abominations taking place in it. All right, shall we continue? Nevertheless, Heliodorus executed that which was decreed. Now, as he was there present himself with his guard about the treasury, Yahuwah Sevaoth, and the prince of all power, caused a great apparition, so that all presumed to come in with him were astonished at the power of Elohim, and fainted, and were sore afraid. For there appeared unto them a horse with a terrible rider upon him, and adorned with a very fair covering. And he ran fiercely, and smote at Heliodorus with his forefeet, and it seemed that he that sat upon the horse had a complete harness of gold. Moreover, 2 other young men appeared before him, notable in strength, excellent in beauty, and comely in apparel, who stood by him on either side, and scourged him continually, and gave him many sore stripes. And Heliodorus fell suddenly unto the ground, and was compassed with great darkness. But they that were with him took him up, and put him into a litter. Thus him that lately came with a great train and with all his guard into the treasury, they carried out, being unable to help himself with his weapons. And manifestly they acknowledged the power of Elohim. For he by the hand of Elohim was cast down, and lay speechless without all hope of life. But they praised Yahuwah, that had miraculously honored his own place, for the temple, which had a little afore was full of fear and trouble, when El Shaddai Yahuwah appeared, was filled with joy and gladness. If we cry out to Yahuwah, if we earnestly yield to the chastening that some of us he has in store for us, some of us need great correction in our life. Some of us need an enormous amount of affliction in our life. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you choose to regard the Father's instructions as something precious and valuable, if you choose to walk in the ways of Yahuwah, you will suffer affliction. It pretty much is a guaranteed promise that if you regard these words as valuable and you start to surrender your life, you start to surrender your sovereignty. Let me be clear, that you would no longer be self-sovereign, but that you would instead be submissive to the sovereign of the earth. You will suffer persecution from the gods of this age, the Elohim of this world, the men and the women and the children who have been infected, who have been taken captive by the devil, by the dragon, to do his desire, will persecute you. Affliction will arise in your life. And you know what? You need it. You need it, because without that same affliction, you cannot bear the fruits of Yahweh's kingdom. You cannot bear the fruits of his kingdom without good affliction in your life. Which brings me to oxens. Oxens, you guys. Marvelous. If you haven't studied creation to learn about the Creator, I highly recommend it. Which means you probably need to go outside. I know. It can be freezing cold. It can be super hot. It could be full of bugs. It could be full of inclement weather. But you know what? You need to go outside every single day. And you know what'll happen? You will learn about the Creator if you would just look around, but not just look, sorry, if you would observe, if you would consider, if you would ponder and wonder, ask questions, get curious. My whole Nature Nate series is all about being innately curious. Just be curious enough to shove your face inside the dirt and look around at what's going on. There's so much happening in our creation that just is inescapable to cause you to praise the Creator. I've been studying plant biology because there's this thing that happens in a plant, like in a tree. There's trees, like a tree behind me. There's a tree behind me. It's big and strong and it looks mighty. You know what? And it's outside. But if we want to grow trees in an indoor environment, or if you want to grow trees sheltered from the wind, if you take a tree and you tie a stake to it, like you go to a nursery and you buy a tree, and it's got a stake that comes with it to help to keep the tree upright as it's young and it's growing. But if you keep that tree staked down, you guys, so that it can't move, what'll happen is if you keep it staked all of its life, it will become so weak that it will literally fall over. It's going to die inevitably. It will never bear the kind of fruit that you want it to. You have to remove the stake and allow the wind to hit that tree. Trees, plants, vines, they need affliction. They need to be afflicted because when they're touched, like when you touch a plant, when you touch like vines, tomatoes, when you touch a tomato, it instantly responds to the touch. When the sun comes out, you guys, plants will literally begin to orient their leaves towards it. This is done by a hormone in their systems called auxins. Auxins will literally communicate. They're a way a plant communicates with itself, with the rest of the plant. They will tell plants like their leaves, they'll tell the leaves to look for the sun. Okay, this is why if you look at ever seen a plant's leaves, a sunflower is a really good example for it. It'll literally orient itself towards the sun as the day goes on, and then as the sun dips down, it will dip down. You know, that's auxins in its system, enabling it to be able to do that. There's also auxins that take place in the roots. They're called like geotrophic, I think. They tell the roots to go down, and so they want to continue to go deeper, right? But then there's something else that happens when something blows on a tree, wind, or you moving a tree. When you move it, what happens is it sends a signal out to tell the roots to make ancillary roots, adventitious roots. It will tell it to make deeper and different roots to go down to grab onto more soil so that it can hold up to the storm that's taking place above it. Because if it doesn't, it knows it will likely fall over. It'll be blown over. It'll die. But nature, these trees, these plants, they want to live. And in order to do that, they know they must deepen their roots, you guys. And you know what? The Father brings adversity into our life when we begin to regard Him because He knows the reality is much of our roots are not in Him. He is not the thing that gives us the roots for by and far for most of us. Most of us no longer have those same roots in our life. Most of us have had the roots of Babylon in them. And so if we want to find a way to get free from the systems of the world, He can cut us out, He could rip us out, or He can teach us how to deepen our roots in Him and in His Word. And generally, He's going to do that by bringing affliction and adversity into your life. So if you go for Him and you're like, why is it my life's falling apart and all these people are hating me now? It's good. You need that in your life. If you're being like, you're the pariah of your family now, welcome. The Father has literally got a whole other kingdom waiting for you. He promises you that in this life you will have trouble, right? But if you would leave everything, all of you that leave family or friends or farms for His name's sake, for keeping His covenant's sake, He will give to you friends and family and farms in this life and in the one to come many times more. But in the meantime, in the interim, you are going to have to learn how to deepen your roots into His system. And adversity and chastisement and correction and discipline is how the Father does that. So we're going to continue on here. All right. So Heliodorus, after he had offered sacrifices unto Yahuwah and made great vows unto Him that had saved his life, and saluted Oniyahu, returned with his host to the king. Then testified he to all men the works of the great Elohim, which he had seen with his eyes. And when the king saw Heliodorus, who might be a fit man to be sent once again to Jerusalem, he said, if you have any enemy or traitor, send him thither, and you shall receive him well scourged, if he escapes with his life. For in that place, no doubt, there is an especial power of Elohim. For He that dwells in heaven has His eye on that place and defends it. And He beats and destroys them that come to hurt it. And the things concerning Heliodorus and the keeping of the treasury fell out on this sword. But this Simeon now, of whom we spoke before, having been a betrayer of the money and of his country, slandered Oniyahu, as if he has terrified Heliodorus, and had been the worker of those evils. Thus was he bold to call him a traitor, that had deserved well of the city, and tended his own nation, and was so zealous of the Torah. But when their hatred went so far that by one of Simeon's faction murderers were committed, Oniyahu, seeing the danger of this contention, and that Apollonius, as being the governor of Silo Aram and Phoenicia, did rage and increase Simeon's malice, he went to the king, not to be an accuser of his countrymen, but seeking the good of all, both public and private. For he saw that it was impossible that the state should be continued quiet, and Simeon leave his folly, unless the king would look unto it. But after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus, called Epiphanes, took the kingdom, Jason, the brother of Oniyahu, labored underhand to be high priest. So this is Oniyahu, who was the great high priest, you guys, who kept the Torah very well and was holy. This is his brother, about to be basically the worst nightmare for all of Israel. Hold on. Promised the king by intercession 360 talents of silver, and of another revenue 80 talents. Beside this, he promised to assign 150 more, if he might have license to set him up a place for exercise, and for the training of youth in the fashion of the heathen, and to write them of Jerusalem by the name of the Antiochans, which when the king had granted, he had gotten into his hand the rule, he forthwith brought his own nation to Yavanish fashion, and the royal privileges granted of special favor to the Yahudim by the means of Yohanan, the father of Apollonius, who went ambassador to Rome for amity and aid, he took away. And putting down the governments which were according to the Torah, he brought up new customs against the Torah. For he built gladly a place of exercise under the tower itself, and brought the chief young men under his subjection, and made them wear a hat. Now such was the height of Yavani fashions and increase of heathenish manners, through the exceeding profaneness of Jason, that wicked wretch and no high priest, that the priests had no courage to serve any more at the altar, but despising the temple and neglecting the sacrifices, hastened to be partakers of the Torahless allowance in the place of exercise, after the game of discus called them forth, not setting by the honors of their fathers, but liking the glory of Yahvanim the best of all, by reason whereof sore calamity came upon them, for they had them to be their enemies and avengers, whose custom they followed so earnestly, and unto whom they desired to be like in all things. For it is not a light thing to do wickedly against the Torah of Elohim, but the time following shall declare these things. Do you understand what's happening here? Jason, he promises the king a huge amount of money if he would be given the great high priesthood. The king gives it to him, and he says he's going to generate other revenue, you guys, through a gymnasium. Okay, a gymnasium back then, you guys, is actually somewhat shockingly similar to modern day gymnasiums, but the people would participate in the games naked. They would go to these gymnasiums naked. Obviously, there's some things that happen if you're a follower of Yahweh and you obey his commandments, if you're a dude. One of them is called the circumcision. And if you're uncircumcised, it would be plainly visible before all people if you were in a gymnasium and you were walking around naked. So, in order to be like the people, the priests even, who were doing the sacrifices, are now instead running around naked, acting like the uncircumcised people. And at that time, the way they did circumcisions was in such a manner that some of the leftovers were left on, enough so that you could imitate an uncircumcised self. But others began to circumcise themselves more fully so that they could not ever imitate the other camp. Does that make sense? I'm trying to be tactful because I understand there's somewhat youthful individuals who may watch this. The people in the gymnasium, you guys, were participating in the games, right? We talk about the Olympics. Don't worry, we all still worship these same Elohim and we still participate in this. If you didn't know it, a gymnasium, guys, is still a place where the same things take place. Okay? Chelsea and I were super into fitness, full disclosure. I worked out at the gym 6 days a week, consistently. My best friend and roommate at the time was a personal trainer at this gym. He was a fitness fiend. I was all into, P90X? Insanity. I was all into insanity, guys. I used to work out like crazy. Chelsea and I were like yoked on our honeymoon. We were stacked. You know what I mean? I had to eat like 6,000 calories a day to try to gain weight back then. It was a little different. I had to work out in the gym all the time to try to get my beach body on. You know what I mean? Because when you're in a gym, you ever notice what the gods of the gym are? Vanity. It's literally a house of mirrors. It's a house of mirrors where all you do is stare at each other or yourself. It's either like, hey, I'm trying to keep an upright life, so I guess I'll stare at myself in the mirror all the time and just isolate that muscle group, isolate that muscle group. The gymnasium is a place of vanity worship. Well, same thing back then, you guys. And it was a place that they set up inside the very courtyard and temple of Yahweh. And it was a great abomination, you guys, because the priests themselves, listen to this, they were seduced by it. And so too are many of you. If you go to a gymnasium, I'm going to give you a challenge right now. Go outside instead. Go volunteer on a farm. Go work on a farm. I'm sure there's one around you. Even if it's winter, there's always work to be done. There's always work to be done that doesn't require you to go stare in a mirror and to be able to isolate your muscle groups to get strong. I know some of you guys need to work on your fitness because the remnant is soft. I love you all, but we're soft. Hence, check out Becoming a Millenite and Linenite. Because, you know what, we got to become mighty. So become a Gibborim too. The way we do that is by deepening our roots in this. It says in the scripture that that exercise is of some gain. Exercising these muscles, spiritual muscles, is of eternal gain. So deepen your roots in this, then worry about your beach body. Do you know what I'm saying in that? You guys need to get functional strength far more than you need to get beach body strength because that's the gods of vanity and they need to be murdered out of your life. You need to become a Gideonite. Go read the book of Judges to find out what that's about. A man who tore down his father's household idols. Tear down those idols, you guys. Get rid of vanity. It's murdering your soul. Okay. It said in here that by reason, but they were not setting by the honors of their father. The priests at the time, they were not going after the way of their fathers, walking in righteousness, like being priests in the house. Instead, but liking the glory of the Yavianim, like the Greeks, best of all. Do you understand what I'm saying? They desired to be like them in all things. They wanted to be like the world. And that's the seduction that vanity can bring you because the world looks so good. The world makes it look so good. Like, I'm amazed people buy new cars. That it still happens. Like, that people buy new cars. But then I watch car ads. And you know what people are always doing in their car ads? Smiling. You know what they're never showing people? Staring at a bill. Going, I don't know how we're going to pay this bill. And how much time you now spend thinking about money. You never show that in the car ad, right? They're like, got my new car. Yeah. It's great. So good to be alive. Look at me, driving on these beautiful roads. Never traffic. They don't just show people sitting in traffic miserable and screaming and hating their lives. They don't show that in their car ads, do they? Unless they're trying to market you like an electric car. And they're like, yeah, guess what? You're not sucking gas down. No more drinking that fuel of those dinosaur bones. Dinosaur bone? Not petroleum. This is a dinosaur bone. This is not petroleum. It will never turn into petroleum, you guys. Fossil fuels is a myth. There's one. That's what dinosaurs turned into when they were buried in the flood. Not petroleum. Oil is like the lubricating system of the earth. It's amazing. I digress. I'm going to go back in. You ready for this? Now, verse 18. This is chapter 4, verse 18. Now, when the game that was used every 4th year, that's the Olympics, was kept at Zor, the king being present, this ungracious Yason sent special messengers from Jerusalem, who were Antiochus, to carry 300 drachmas of silver to the sacrifices of Hercules, Yeah, still the same gods that Marvel is trying to make you all worship and Star Wars is trying to make you guys resurrect. They've been worshiping them forever. How many of you guys taken your time, your energy, and your emotions and sold them off to the gods of Hercules, Thor, Zeus? Be honest. The Father's going to uproot those roots. Plant them into here instead. Which even the bearers thereof thought fit not to bestow upon the sacrifice, because it was not convenient, but reserved for other charges. This money, then, in regard of the sender, was appointed to Hercules' sacrifice. But because the bearers of it, meaning the guys who were carrying the money to the sacrifices, it was employed to the making of galleys. Galleys were these massive ships that they used to make for their navy. It was, I'll roll in some footage because it's going to be hard to articulate any other way. Beautiful galleys, huge ships with teams of oarsmen, like 2-3 decks high of people rowing. They had sails and stuff too, but they also rowed and they would ram them into each other. Amazing. The tops of them were kind of flattish so that you could have full-on combat and warfare on the top too and have soldiers and platoons. Marines! You could have Marines on the top decks to do some sweet fighting. Anyways, I digress. Instead of offering the money to Hercules, guys, the bearers of the money took it and built ships for a navy. Now when Apollonius, the son of Menesthias, was sent into Mitzrayim for the coronation of King Ptolemy Philometor, remember, this is like one of the generals of Alexander the Great. These are the people that Alexander gave the kingdom of Egypt to, one of his generals, Ptolemy. Antiochus, understanding him not to be well affected to his affairs, provided for his own safety, whereupon he came to Jaffa, and from thence to Jerusalem, where he was honorably received of Jason and of the city, and was brought in with torches alight, and with great shoutings, and so afterward went with his hosts unto Phoenicia. 3 years after, Jason sent to Menelaus, the aforesaid Simeon's brother, to bear the money unto the king, and to put him in mind of certain necessary matters. But he, being brought to the presence of the king, when he had magnified him for the glorious appearance of his power, got the priesthood to himself, offering more than Jason by 300 talents of silver. So now we're up to like 600 talents of silver, or 680 talents of silver. But when he brought, so he came with the king's mandate, bringing nothing worthy of the high priesthood, but having the fury of a cruel tyrant and the rage of a savage beast. There's that beast image. Then Jason, who had undermined his own brother, being undermined by another, was compelled to flee into the country of Ammon. That, you guys, is a great example of mishpat, justice. That's how it works. What you do unto others is going to be done unto you. So treat others the way you want to be treated. He undermined his brother, Oniyahu, so Jason got undermined by someone else's brother. Savage. That's the beast system. You ever seen dogs eating dogs? No? You ever seen a lion eat its own baby? They do that too. That's the beast system. It's everywhere in nature. If you go study nature, you'll also see it's savage. Like, unbelievably savage, you guys. A tree, for example, trees are also savage in this way. A mother tree will shed down these beautiful pine cones, right? Long needle pine trees. They'll drop down pine cones to, make baby pine trees. But then the mama pine tree, she's got such big, tall boughs of pine needles that she shades out her babies and they die. So she herself is preserving her way of life by killing her babies. Nature is savage like this. So don't be a part of the beast system. Okay, let's go on. For unto him, So Menelaus got the principality, but as for the money that he had promised unto the king, he took no good order for it, albeit Sostratius, the ruler of the castle, required it. For unto him appertained the gathering of the customs, wherefore they were both called before the king. Now Menelaus left his brother Lysimachus in his stead, in the priesthood, and Sostratius left Crates, who was the governor of the Cyprians. While those things were in doing, they of Tarsus and Malus made insurrection, because they were given to the king's concubine, called Antiochus. Then came the king in all haste to appease the matters, leaving Andronicus, a man in authority, for his deputy. Now Menelaus supposed that he had gotten a convenient time So he stole certain vessels of gold out of the temple and gave some of them to Antiochus, and some he sold to Zoar and the cities round about, which, when Oniyahu knew of for sure, he reproved him and withdrew himself into a sanctuary at Daphne that lies by Antioch. Wherefore Menelaus, taking Antiochus apart, prayed him to get Oniyahu into his hands, who being persuaded thereunto, and coming to Oniyahu in deceit, gave him his right hand with oaths. And though he were suspected by him, yet persuaded he to come forth of the sanctuary, whom forthwith he shut up without regards to justice, meaning he murdered Oniyahu there. For the which the cause not only the Yahudim, but many of the other nations took great indignation, and were much grieved for the unjust murder of the man. And when the king was come again from the place from Cilicia, the Yahudim that were in the city, and certain of the Yavanim that abhorred the fact also, complained because Oniyahu was slain without cause. Therefore Antiochus was heartily sorry, and moved to pity, and wept because of the sober and modest behavior of him that was dead. And being kindled with anger, forthwith he took away Antiochus his purple, and rent off his clothes, and leading him through the whole city unto that very place where he had committed impiety against Oniyahu, there he slew that cursed murderer, Mishvat. Thus Yahuwah rewarded him his punishment as he had deserved. It's inescapable, you guys. You cannot escape justice. Because Yahuwah, you guys want justice? Yahuwah is the one who dispenses justice out of his cup. Justice and righteousness are the foundations of his throne. Hold on. Let's just go to that reference real quick, because it's awesome. Psalm 89. I will sing of the mercies of Yahuwah forever. With my mouth will I make known your faithfulness to all generations. For I have said, mercy shall be built up forever. Your faithfulness shall you establish in the very heavens. I have cut a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn unto David my servant. Your seed will I establish forever, and build up your throne to all generations. Selah. And the heavens shall praise your wonders, O Yahuwah, your faithfulness also in the assembly of the Kodeshim. For who in heaven can be compared unto Yahuwah? Who among the sons of the mighty can be likened unto Yahuwah? El is greatly to be feared in the assembly of the Kodeshim, and to be had in reverence of all them that are about him. O Yahuwah Elohim Sevaoth, who is a strong Yah like unto you, or to your faithfulness round about you? You rule the raging of the sea. When the waves thereof arise, you still them. You have broken Rahab in pieces as one that is slain. You have scattered your enemies with your strong arm. The heavens are yours. The earth also is yours. As for the world and the fullness thereof, you have founded them. The north and the south, you have created them. Tavor and Harman shall rejoice in your name. You have a mighty arm. Strong is your hand, and high is your right hand. Justice and judgment, or righteousness, are the foundations of your throne. Mercy and truth shall go before your face. Blessed is the people that know the joyful sound. They shall walk, O Yahuwah, in the light of your countenance. In your name shall they rejoice all the day, and in your righteousness shall they be exalted. For you are the glory of their strength, and in your favor our horn shall be exalted. For Yahuwah is our defense, and the Holy One of Yasharel is our king. That is who Yahuwah is. Justice and righteousness are the foundations of his throne. Mercy and truth go before his face. That is why it's inescapable for the way that you live your life, it will come back upon you, you guys. It is unavoidable. So deepen your roots into the things that he says, and he will bear forth fruit. And in the day of judgment, Yeshua, the one, will lift you up so that you do not perish from it. All right? Now, when many sacrileges had been committed in the city by Lysimachus, with the consent of Menelaus, then the fruit thereof was spread abroad. The multitude gathered themselves together against Lysimachus, many vessels of gold being already carried away. Whereupon the common people rising and being filled with rage, Lysimachus armed about 3,000 men, and began first to offer violence. One, Arrhenius, being the leader, a man far gone in years, and no less in folly. They then, seeing the attempt of Lysimachus, some of them caught stones, some caught clubs, and others took handfuls of dust, whatever was at hand, and cast them all together upon Lysimachus, and those that were setting upon them. Thus many of them were wounded, and some were struck to the ground, and all of them were forced to flee. But as for the temple robber himself, him they killed beside the treasury. Of these matters, therefore, there was an accusation laid against Menelaus. Now when the king came to Zor, 3 men that were sent from them Senate pleaded the cause before him. But Menelaus, being now convicted, promised Ptolemy, the son of Doreminus, to give him much money if he would pacify the king toward him. Whereupon Ptolemy, taking the king aside in a certain gallery, as it were, to take air, brought him there to another mind, insomuch that he discharged Menelaus from the accusations, who, notwithstanding, was the cause of all the mischief. And those poor men, whom if they had told their cause, yea, before the Scythians, should have been judged innocent, them he instead condemned to death. Thus they that followed the matter for the city, and for the people, and for the holy vessels, did soon suffer unjust punishment. Wherefore even they of Zor, moved with hatred of that wicked deed, caused them to be honorably buried. And so through the covetousness of them that were of power, Menelaus remained still in authority, increasing in malice, and being a great traitor to the citizens. About the same time, Antiochus prepared his second voyage to Mitzrayim. And then it happened that through all the city, for the space of almost 40 days, there were seen horsemen running in the air, in cloth of gold, and armed with lances like a band of soldiers, and the troops of horsemen in array, encountering and running one against another, with shaking of shields, and multitude of pikes, and drawing of swords, and casting of spears, and glittering of golden armaments, and the harnesses of all sorts. Wherefore every man prayed that the apparition might turn to good. Now when there was gone forth a false rumor, as though Antiochus had been dead, Jason took at least 1,000 men, and suddenly made an assault upon the city. And they that were upon the walls being put back, and the city at length taken, Menelaus fled into the castle. But Jason slew his own citizens without mercy, not considering that to get the day of his own nation would be an unhappy day for him, but thinking that they had been his enemies and not his countrymen whom he had conquered. Howbeit for all this he obtained not the principality, but at the last received shame for the reward of his treason, and fled again into the country of the Ammonites. And in the end thereof he had an unhappy return, being accused before Areteus, the king of Imean, fleeing from the city to city, pursued of all men, hated as a forsaker of the Torah, and being had in an abomination as an open enemy of his country and countrymen, he was cast out into Mitzrayim. Thus he that had driven many out of their country perished in a strange land, retiring to the Lacedaemonians, and thinking there to find help by reason of his kindred. And he that had cast out many unburied had none to mourn for him, nor any solemn funerals at all, nor any sepulchre with his father. Now when that was done came to the king's ear, he thought that the Yehuda had revolted, whereupon, removing out of Mitzrayim, so this is Antiochus, Antiochus hears about all this stuff that's going on, you guys, and he thinks that the Jews, that the tribe of Yehuda, that they had rebelled. And so he, being in Egypt, this is Antiochus, decides to get a huge army to go after him. In a furious mind, he took the city by force of arms and commanded his men of war not to spare such as they meant, and to slay such as went upon the houses. Thus there was killed of young and old, making a way of men and women and children, the slaying of virgins and infants. And there were destroyed within the space of 3 days 80,000. Wherefore 40,000 were slain in the battle, and no fewer sold than slain. Yet was he not content with this, but presumed to go into the most holy temple of all the world. Menelaus, the traitor to the Torah and to his own country, being his guide, and taking the holy vessels with polluted hands, and with profane hands pulling down the things that were dedicated by other kings to the augmentation and the glory and the honor of the place, he gave them away. And so haughty was Antiochus in mind that he considered not that Yahuwah was angry for a while for the sins of them that dwelt in the city. Therefore his eyes were not upon the place. For had they not been formerly wrapped in many sins, this man, as soon as he had come, had forthwith been scourged and put back from his presumptions, as Heliodorus was, whom Seleucus the king had sent to view the treasure. Nevertheless, Elohim did not choose the people for the place's sake, but the place for the people's sake. And therefore the place itself that was partaker with them of the adversity that happened to the nation did afterward communicate in the benefits sent from Yahuwah. And as it was forsaken in the wrath of El Shaddai, so again the great Yahuwah being reconciled, it was set up with all glory. Man, the place itself suffered the scourge. When Oniyahu was the priest, the chief high priest, Yahuwah himself sent messengers to punish and scourge the man who went into the temple to defile it. But now the high priest and the people are defiling that place. They've set up abominations in there. They've gone after trying to be like the same people that their oppressors are. They've gone and been like the beasts of the world. And because of that, when they cried out for deliverance and the people, the worst people in their lives come in to try to set up abominations in their temple, Yahuwah does not deliver them. But instead, Yahuwah is going to use Antiochus as the scourge against Yehuda. He's going to scourge his own people with Antiochus because the people disregarded his instructions. This is how the Father chastises us, for our good always. So when Antiochus had carried out of the temple 1,800 talents, he departed in all haste unto Antioch, weening in his pride to make the land navigable, and the sea passable by foot. Such was the haughtiness of his mind. And he left governors to vex the nation at Jerusalem, Philip, for his country a Phrygian or Pyrigan, and for his manners more barbarous than he that set before him there. And at Gerizim, Antiochus, and besides Menelaus, was worse than all the rest, bore a heavy hand over the citizens, having a malicious mind against his countrymen, the Yahudim. Maliciousness, guys, is inventing ways of evil. It's devising strategies to do evil to others. He sent also the detestable ringleader, Apollonius, with an army of 22,000, commanding him to slay all those that were in their best age, and to sell the women and the younger sorts, who coming to Jerusalem, pretending in peace, waited until the holy day of the Sabbath, when taking Yahudim who were keeping the holy day, he commanded his men to arm themselves. And so he slew all them that were gone to celebrate the Sabbath, and running through the city with weapons slew great multitudes. But Yahuda Maccabee, with 9 others thereabout, withdrew himself into the wilderness, and lived in the mountains after the manner of beasts, with his company, who fed on herbs continually, lest they should be partakers of the pollution. This is where you enter in the changing point of the story, because Yahuda Maccabee is about to be the man, along with those 9 men who were with him, who rose up from amidst the congregation, like Phineas. Go read Numbers 22 through 26. Numbers, the best book of the Bible, one of them. But in chapters 23 through 26, if you want to read about a man who rose up amidst the congregation, Phineas. Yahuda Maccabee here, along with 9 others, fled to the wilderness, and they sustained themselves like the beasts do, meaning he ate food out of the field that was not cultivated like the tomato vine or like the apple tree in the same way. He ate the things that were not being sold in the market. He ate the herbs of the field.
When you want to find tasty treats, flowers. Do you know you can eat most flowers? You realize as you start to learn about foraging that basically, once again, everything you've been taught is a lie. Most of the food we go to the stores and buy to eat, it's not actually food, right? It's not real anymore. It doesn't, like you've never really eaten a real banana. They should have seeds. You ever wonder why there's not one seed ever in a banana? It's not a good sign. You know what's in this one? Pollen, life. I found bees inside this. I had to fight them for it. Guess who won? This guy. I don't know what this is, so I'm not gonna eat it. That being said, I'm standing under the shadow of an unfinished pyramidal obelisk known as One Trade Center. It's a pretty wild place to be, but you know what's so good? Even here, if you're sent on a mission to spy out the land, you can find food that Yahweh himself has been growing for you. No matter where you are, no matter where you're stuck or where you think you're stuck, Yahweh can provide for you. Food, water. I see water. I'm obviously gonna swim in it. And clothing. See this linen shirt? Amazing. Linen pants? Even better. I just walked into a store down the road here where this same shirt, I'm not even kidding, pollen face, was $185, and a tunic that was next to it was $300 and some odd change. Isn't that amazing? I got this for literally entire outfit for less than $2.25. But yet, those flowers right there are being served up on somebody else's delicate, dainty plate. Mine. Be brave. Go eat flowers and swim in the brown, skanky water. Avoid the chlorinated pools that look clean but are full of poison. Think about it.
The next Nature Nate, you guys, that we're going to release is all about foraging, because Chelsea and I have been studying foraging, because you know what? We're probably going to have to go live off the food, the forests all around us, and the food that they have in them. There may be a season where the Father calls us into the wilderness, and you might have to forage for sustenance. And you know what's so beautiful is you will never eat better in all of your life than when you eat out of his creation. Real quick, did you know every single grass is edible? All of it. 300-ish varieties of grass, they're all edible. To you, human. You can eat them, just like the ruminants. Like this guy. See this fossil? This is a fossil tooth. It used to look like this.
A little before and after. Just gonna take this little unassuming tooth, not so little, giant creature tooth, and I'm going to buff it down so we can really see that enamel. Goodness, I'm doing it already, you can see. Uncovering treasures. This is how it looks now.
Nice. Good job.
Polish your teeth. Seriously. Diatomaceous earth, bentonite clay, coconut oil. Polish your teeth. None of those were used on this tooth. A whole lot of corundum dust. Delicious. So much better for you.
It used to be all black and ugly and unassuming. But you know what? When I stripped it, when I literally crushed it, when I abraded it with violence, when I took it to a sander, when I ran that thing over it, and I literally ground off all of the imperfections, the impurities, when I chastised it, it revealed the wonders that were within it. Marvelous, beautiful things that were hidden inside it that could not exist to the eye. unless they were ground off. Each and every one of us, you guys, we have so many things that the system of the world has impregnated us with, that we need to get scourged out of us, that we would abstain from partaking in the pollution of the world and be willing to go live off the grass of the field if the Father wants us to. He fed his people manna in the wilderness. It rained out of the sky like dew on the grass, and it was exactly what the people needed. Go become a Linenite, because you know what? The Father has beautiful grains waiting for you, but forage the fields too. So I encourage you to be bold and courageous like these people were. We're about to enter into the crazy, most insane stories you've ever heard or never heard in your life. And I thank you, each and every one of you, for taking the time to consider and wonderfully regard the powers of his ways and walking in the set-apart ways of our Father in heaven. I love you guys so much, and I'm so thankful that the days are evil, because you know what? It gives you an opportunity to live dangerously and to prove whose you are, what kingdom you really belong to. And you know what's great? You can let your face shine before men, and they can see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. I love you. I'll talk to you soon.